Okay, excellent. All right, we've got, welcome to our deep dive session number 7. Our session that Sandesh was going to cover on custom journey activities has been moved out. He had a client conflict that'll be coming in the end of October. So we thought we'd do a little bit of a deep dive into customizing Salesforce with Journey Builder. Usually it's the other way around, but with the power of Journey Builder and Marketing Cloud, we're going to be diving into that use case today. So let's dive into just talk about what is coming up down the road. We still have a bunch of deep dive sessions coming up. We've got next week TikTok, and we've got building AI journeys and a bunch of other sessions coming up as well. And then, as you may know, every Wednesday we have hands-on sessions where you can sign up and build right in the platform. Next Wednesday's session is to build from scratch the wait until event functionality using a cloud page with a handler to send an API call to activate that activity. Sandesh will be leading that. Please let us know if you'd like to be a builder. Just drop your email in the chat and we will sign you up for those to be a builder. Okay, let's talk about what we're going over today, customizing Salesforce. The focus of our customization is going to be on the individual email results object, the IER. We're going to going through how we're going to customize the IER, capturing the data in Marketing Cloud so that we can populate that object back in Salesforce, and then using journeys to make those updates in Salesforce. We also are coming up, going to be talking about a custom application that we developed that allows users to preview. It gives an enhanced experience in the individual email results record, where you can preview an email with send time personalization and actually resend it. And then we've got 5 tips at the end. So we'll get started. The IER, so what is it? It is an object in Salesforce that populates all of that send engagement data, also shows a little, not all the time, but will show you a little thumbnail of the email that was sent. So an incredibly valuable object record that is in the Salesforce CRM environment. How do you get it? When you set the Marketing Cloud Connect, it gets populated, gets created, and then upon specific sends within Marketing Cloud, that data gets populated in the Salesforce CRM environment. So why should you want to learn more, get to know about the individual email results in the Salesforce CRM environment? So obviously, as you'll see, it gets populates with some pretty amazing send data. So not only the date, but also includes details about the email itself, like the subject line, the name of the email. It will also capture and be updated with engagement. So when it was open, clicked, it is in the Salesforce CRM environment, so it is reportable. So you can use that for the tools, especially with your sales team being in that environment. Obviously, having that data in Salesforce gives it a lot of flexibility and capability, and it's customizable, which is wonderful. You can modify, add some fields, and populate whichever data that you'd like. It's going to be helpful for your scenario, and that's what we're going to be going over today. Let's talk about our use case, just to set the stage. So Northern Trail Outfitters has launched a marketing campaign. They've got an upcoming conference, and they want their sales team to invite prospective clients to that conference so that they can buy the next year's merchandise, outdoor merchandise for their stores. So after this campaign was launched, they're noticing that there's a lot fewer signups for the conference than they expected, and they're sort of noticing that the sales the adoption from sales has been pretty low, but they're not really able to see in Salesforce who's sending that email so that they could follow up with sales. When they have talked with sales, the salespeople are expressing an interest that whenever they've sent an email to a prospective client, they want to see the promo items that were sent to them. that's part of the email itself. As you want to, as you're going to be joining this conference or attending this conference, you get some of these promo items when you attend. And the salespeople want to see that, and the current functionality doesn't allow them to see that in the individual email results. So how can we solve this for the sales team? So we're going to create and populate some custom fields. It's going to allow us to populate in the individual email results the send from name and send from email, so that sales management can see and run a report to see which salespeople are sending this email and which are not. That'll allow them to customize those out-of-box reports with those custom fields. We also want to enable or create some custom code so that the salespeople in the individual email results can preview that actual email and see those promo items, see the personalization, so that they can, and when they're talking with their client, they can refer to those items. On the Marketing Cloud side, we're going to want to populate additional fields from that send data from those emails in the Sen Log. That's going to be our link to the individual email results in the Marketing Cloud environment. So we're going to want to create an automation to pull in that data so that we can update the individual email results records. And then we can want this to be an automated solution, right? We don't want to do this on a monthly basis, quarterly basis. We want a solution that's automated that will work over time. I've got a good question in the channel. Does that have storage issue impact in Salesforce? It does. So if you are adding custom fields to your individual email results records, that does add 2 more fields in there. But I think the greater issue from a storage standpoint are all of those individual email results records. So something to be mindful of. Adding a couple extra fields is not going to dramatically have an impact on storage. It's usually an issue of purging those older individual email results records, like maybe 2 years and older. So great question. So let's talk about what we're going to build today. So first, we're going to go in the Salesforce CRM environment. We won't add those fields. They've already been added, but show how we can simply add fields to any object, pretty straightforward. Take a look at a report that would validate, the current state of that data not being populated, and then also take a look at the individual email results a little bit more in detail. Take a look at that email thumbnail to see, how it doesn't really display that custom, the personalization for those emails. Then we're going to hop into Marketing Cloud, and we're going to populate values in the Sen Log so that we can use AMP script in our emails to populate those values. We're going to want to populate the send from and send from name and send from email on those email sends in the Sen Log. And then we're going to use an automation. Then we're going to create a journey to validate that the Sen Log is being populated correctly. And then the last step was where we're going to use a journey to populate those records in the individual email results objects themselves. So we're going to create a query that joins the Sen Log and the individual email results synchronized data extension, create a journey with that object activity, something that we've showcased before, so it's not going to be brand new for most of us, and then to test and run that batch through. So let's just quickly talk about what we're going to be doing from like an overall architectural level before we get into the platform. So it starts with the email send. So when you send that email, we're going to have an AMP script, a custom script that's going to populate those values at the time of send. And that's going to populate those values in the Sen Log. And also in the Salesforce CRM environment, a individual email result object is created upon the send of that email, an appropriate send. So if it's a Salesforce send or a journey send, an individual email results record is created. That data comes into Marketing Cloud in the synchronized data extensions for the individual email results. So we're going to join these 2 data sources into an automation that's going to identify that individual email results record and it's going to say, okay, I've got this record. I need to populate these two new fields on the IER object itself with that send from email and the send from name. That's going to allow us to create, update our report to see those data fields as well. We'll be also going through a little bit more detail on the preview and resend functionality as well. What we're going to want to do on that end is we want to populate a data extension that in the Sen Log that we can access with the the preview resend functionality. We'll go through that in a little bit, but basically, our 3 steps are populate the fields in the Sen Log upon send. That creates the IER record, create that automation that queries both of those, and then repopulate those fields in the IER record. So let's go into Salesforce and let's take a look at these IER records. So it depends on where you have them located in your page layout, but this is an example of a particular contact, and we've pulled up their IER record. So you can see some of the details that we've just sort of talked about briefly. Got some of that send information, the day that was sent, email information, whether it was opened, clicks, and so got some of that custom information. Then you can also see down here, here's that email thumbnail. So, it's not the best representation. This journey table AMP script here is displaying the promotional items that sales is interested. So it's a little bit of a, not the best experience for sales. They want to see an email preview and say, okay, for this person, their name isn't even personalized. What were the items that we emailed them that we want, that they may be interested in when they attend the conference? So that's something that we'll go through the functionality, how to do that. But as far as those simple values that we want to add, we added 2 custom fields in the Sen Log, in the IER, and added them to the page layout. So the send from name and the send from email. So you can see this IER record does not have those populated currently, and that's what we're going to look to populate with the functionality in Marketing Cloud. And let's just take a look at a report to take a look at this data sort of a little bit more in aggregate. Don't have a ton of records here, just to use an example, but here's that IER record. So to find that data, there are out-of-the-box reports, individual email results with contact or with lead. Just some simple filtering will allow you to populate some simple data here. So you can see here's that record that we just looked for, that IER record. And again, that send from email and send from name is not populated. So this is what we're going to look to get populated and then do an enhanced report so that the sales team could filter through here to see which salespeople for which accounts are those emails being sent. Okay, so now we're going to hop back into Marketing Cloud, and our first stop is the Sen Log. So in order to get these fields populated in the IER, we need to get these fields populated in the Sen Log so there's a source upon send. So what we've gone ahead to do, for those who are not familiar with the Sen Log is a unique data extension that has that captures the send of every email that is sent in your business unit. It's just like any other data extension, so you can add data extension fields. So you can see here we added 2 different fields here, the send from name and the send from email. Those values we're going to look to capture and then query and populate the IER records once they're populated. We also have these 2 other fields here, this data source name and journey data extension. These 2 values are going to be used for that preview resend functionality. We need an ability for the IER record to reference the data extension for each send. That's the missing piece that you're not currently seeing in the IER today, is the ability to link that HTML that you see in the IER with that data extension so you can get that send time personalization. That's why we added these 2 fields. You'll see that in the AMP script and also in the logic as we add that. So to help illustrate how this would work, we created a journey that has 2 email sends. They're very similar to the same email, But what we've got in the first email, we don't have any logic in this email that populates those records in the Sen Log. This second email we do. So let's click into this email and take a look what we've got set up on the AMP script side that's going to allow you to populate those values in the Sen Log. Let's go into here. We're going to click into this email. And here's that email you sort of saw in the IER. Here's an example of how that email should be personalized. Again, there's that first name, a little bit of a wonky name for testing purposes, but you can see these are the values, these are the items that the salespeople want to see, that they're communicating with their clients that they may be interested in when they attend that conference. So this email is built with an email design system that has different content blocks. And one of those content blocks we use, and we've covered this in another session, is a code snippet block that allows you to populate values using AMP script in an email. It's really the best practice to use a code snippet block. It doesn't really interfere with your coding. So, and to do AMP script coding, you just open up a %% square bracket and you close it down at the end. And then here you can just write in your AMP script. Let's just go over quickly how to set a value in the Sen Log, once it's populated. So in our example, we'll cover in this section here, sections 11 through 13. This is where we're populating the values of the send from name and the send from email. So to get the value for that, who sent this email, this journey is a campaign send, where the salespeople, all they need to do is drop a contact into that campaign, and they will receive this email. So when you drop that campaign, that contact into the campaign, a field is created that's created by ID for that salesperson. So we're simply pulling in that value from the journey, and we're setting this user ID to identify who that user is, who that salesperson is. And then because we have synchronized the user object into the Salesforce CRM environment, we're just using a lookup, a simple lookup to that data extension. What we want to return is the name of that user based on the user ID that's being passed in the journey. So we won't cover this in detail, but we can cover that maybe in a hands-on session, how to use a lookup function in AMP script. It's super powerful, but we're basically just looking up that user ID to return the name and the email. Now to set that value in the Sen Log, it's very simple. All you have to do is to create a variable that is the exact name of the field in the Sen Log, and then you just set it. And that's all you need to do to populate those values in the Sen Log. Upon send, that will be populated. It's as easy as that. But definitely be careful and be mindful when you're creating those values in the Sen Log that your development team isn't using these variables in other coding to send, to set variables that might be using it for a dynamic sender profile. They might be using it for different variables because if they're using it in some other function and they set it, further down in the code, it's going to replace that logic. So just be mindful of that. Here's another example of another field that can be popular to include in the Sen Log, the email ID. So an email ID is the unique value for a content piece for each email. So that can be helpful to track down in the Sen Log and query. And again, it's super simple. You're just setting this value based on this email ID. Now this underscore email ID, this is a personalization string. It's a standard out-of-the-box personalization string. Definitely take a look at personalization strings in Marketing Cloud. There's a whole host of variables that you can utilize. You just simply have to use this underscore and the value of the field, and it'll automatically populate at the time of send. The last part is this data extension value, this data source name. Now this is populating, aligning so that we can see that send time personalization in the IER record for that preview resend functionality. For most sends, all you need to do is set this data source name equal to that personalization string, the data source name. That works for user-initiated sends. Unfortunately, for journey sends, the data source name is always populated with all subscribers. We asked Marketing Cloud, the Salesforce support, why that is the case. They're still looking into why that is the case. And so what you need to do for journey sends in order to populate this value is you need to set a field in your journey data extension and name it the name of that data extension. And doing that will allow you to pull in that value and set that data source name if it's a journey send. So that is able to give you the ability to populate that data extension. Okay, so that's a quick walkthrough of using AMScript on how to populate those values. One other tip that you can use, let's quickly just do a preview of this just to, to confirm this is working. So I've got in our content block, just for testing purposes, I'm outputting the send from name and the send from email just to see to make sure that that works. So let's just preview this against the data extension that we've sent through the journey and just make sure that that's coming through. So you can see it's using that AMScript logic based on the user ID that's being passed through. So again, this is that created by ID. There's that user ID that's coming through for that campaign send. And that's doing the lookup to that user in the synchronized data extension, and it's returning my name and my email. So it's a good way to prove to make sure that that works in your content before you activate it. One more thing that I want to mention is using a way of using, instead of having this code be created for every single one of your email sends, you can use something like a content block by key that will allow you to make that a little bit more simpler. So what I've done here is I've created a content block, a separate content block that has that exact same logic as a block. And so instead of writing this code or having this code be here, I'm just going to replace this with the content block by key function. So content block by key. And if you do open that paren, you'll see this browse button, which is kind of handy. And it'll usually pull you up to, you can just go and search for that script. And because I've just created that block pretty recently, it does come up in my search there. And that's all you need to pull in that script. So what the advantages are for this is that you can include this script in, say you have this header or this custom script in all of your emails. You can just add this content block by key. And so that for every email send, you're always populating those send log values. If you need to add a new value that needs to be populated in the send log, you can just come back to the script and just add a new value. So it's a way to sort of universalize and make sure for all of your email sends, you're populating all those values equally. So just to preview that, just to make sure to show how that works, since we just deleted all of that code, let's delete this too. It's just good just to test that one more time. So let's just preview it again and see if that those custom values were populated down there below. Yep, so the exact same thing. Again, it's just pulling in that same logic. Okay, so now that we've got that populated, let's test how this can be populated in the Sen Log itself. So what we're going to do is we're going to go and find a contact in the Salesforce CRM environment, and we're going to drop them into this campaign so that we send them the email that does not populate these custom values in the Sen Log, and then the second one that does, so you can see sort of like the before and after. So we're going to select that contact, we're going to add them to this campaign, we're going to use add to campaign, we're going to overwrite that member status, we're going to hit submit. Let's go into that campaign, pull up this campaign just to see that campaign member being populated. There it is right there. Need to refresh that. Sometimes that doesn't show it right away. And there we go. I'm added to the campaign. So let's go back to the journey. We're going to hit save. We're going to exit out of this email. One quick point when you're updating journeys, when you're refreshing, you want to, if you've made any changes, to validate that a change has been made. If you hit the done button, this is a sign that your email has been updated. If you don't see that, your email may not be updated. Your latest changes might not happen in the journey. So just something just to be mindful of. Let's just check this journey to see if we've got another entrant coming in. Let's just refresh this journey and see. We've got, been sending a couple of test records through this morning, so there might be a few more in here. Okay, just see. Okay, so we've probably got that journey entrant coming in. So we may not have time to wait for that, but let's go take a look at the Sen Log. I've got a couple examples of how this was populated from a previous send, and we can take a look at how the email 1 doesn't populate the values in the Sen Log, and show how email 2 does populate those values. So we're going to go into Contact Builder. Our Sen Log is pretty small, so you don't. We can actually just take a look at it. Usually, you'll want to use a query to find those Sen Log values. So let's just go into our records. We're going to go to the end of the Sen Log. This is should have been those most recent records that were just added. So I'm going to hit go to the end here. And then let's go to the bottom to see these records being sent through. Okay, so you can sort of see some of these, this send is starting to come through here. This is that first email send. So here's that contact that I dropped through. Here's that record that's being populated. And you can see that the values that we want to populate the send from name, send from email, and also the email ID. And we also want to populate this data source name as well. That's going to enable the preview resend functionality. So you can see this most recent send, because it doesn't have that scripting for that first email. You can see that this personalization, the email ID, the first name, the send from name, and the send from email are not populated in the Sen Log value, nor is that data extension as well. So I think if we just refresh this, we should see that second record come through in that journey. And we should hopefully see that record that shows the data populated in there that we're going to be leveraging. So we'll go back into the Sen Log. Yeah, there it just added one more record. So the journey is literally being updated as we speak. Let's go down to that record. Okay, there we go. So there's that new record that was just added. And then you can see, because we added that script, we're adding those values in the Sen Log. And there's that all-important data extension name that the preview resend functionality is going to give the ability to able to see that send time personalization in the IER. Okay, so now that we've got this data populating the Sen Log, let me just, we'll take a pause there. I've got some questions. Let me answer a couple of these questions. Let's see, especially if it's what if the email was populated in Email Studio and saved? So great question. If you are doing your editing in Email Studio and you save it, it will not be refreshed in the journey itself. You'll need to pull up that journey and just go into that email like we just showed you, exit out of it, and then hit that done button. You see that refresh, and that should refresh your content in the journey itself. We may not have the privilege of editing the content at that point. Okay. Especially if the journey is live, we may not have the privilege of editing the content at that point. Can any recent tweaks in Email Studio reflect in the live journey? So you can update an email in a live journey. You shouldn't have any limitations from doing that. You just need to make those updates and follow that same process of exiting out the email and clicking that done button, and that should refresh it in a live journey. which email ID should be used for this to work? Can we use account ID, or doesn't it only use person contact ID or something else? This might be related to a subscriber key. Sometimes, depending on your environment, an account ID can be that contact or lead ID. So you typically want the subscriber to be the ID for that subscriber key to be the record of the contact, lead, or sometimes it's called an account, that individual person in the Salesforce CRM environment. You don't want to use an account ID that has a one-to-many relationship with multiple contacts in it. Well, that answers that question. Okay, so next up, we've got this data populated in the Sen Log. Now we need to combine all this data, pull it in so that we can make this update in the IER record. So we're going to use our queries to do that. So here's an example of our query in Query Studio. So just like that diagram, we're going to be pulling in our data from the individual email results records. Again, once they're created, which you have to give it about an hour to do that, sometimes longer. And then we're also pulling in the Sen Log. Now, most recently, I think over the last 6 months or even the last year, the IER, individual email results object and synchronized data extension, they added fields that allows you to make a one-to-one relationship with the Sen Log. So the standard linkage to the Sen Log are those 4 values you might have seen. It's the subscriber ID, the job ID, the list ID, and the batch ID. So those are all available now on the IER record. So all we're doing to join these two, these two data sources is using an on statement where we're matching the subscriber ID field on the IER object, synchronized data extension, to that subscriber ID on the Sen Log. That gives you that one-to-one match, allows you to identify that record. Now, in our where clause, we're identifying, just for this use case, we're identifying a specific email that we want to do a test for. In the live automation, you won't want this filter. You want to have all those individual email results objects being updated. We've also got here the specific contact ID that we want to update. Again, you want to test this to make sure this works on a record-by-record basis before you go and mass update all of your individual email results records. And then we want to just, this is another filter, we want to pull in those records for this contact I use a lot, so we only want to pull in those that have that send from name that is not null. And then we're using our select statement to output a couple of variables that we're going to need to make that update in the journey itself. There's only 3 real ones that are important. These 4 here are more for logging. This merge ID, this individual email results ID, is the actual ID for that IER record that we're going to want to use to make that update in the journey. The send from name, the send from email, those are coming from the Sen Log. Those are the fields that we want to update in those fields in the IER record. So when we run this query, you can see that here's that ID for that IER record that we're going to be using to make the updates. Here's the send from name and the send from email. So we're going to take this query. We're going to go to our automation. Let me just refresh this. Sometimes Automation Studio does start a timeout. Let me also refresh this as well. And let's go into our automation. And let's just edit this. And we're just going to add in this most recent query, which has that specific subscriber in there. We're going to validate that syntax. And since we had run it through Query Studio, it should work. So we should be good from that standpoint. And we are just going to be overwriting this data extension there. Now, we've got a journey set up that is going to make that update. So let me just run this automation, and then we'll go into what this journey is doing. So I'm going to just manually run this once. Ideally, you want this to be automated, maybe making these updates on every day, like early in the morning. So I'm going to run this once. Now this query is connected to this journey, which we're going to go over in a second. So we're going to select all activities. We're going to click run. Sometimes it takes a second for this query to activate. So let me just go back to this journey. So this is the journey that's attached to that automation. I think Michelle covered how to, Michelle Medina in a previous session covered how to connect an automation to a journey. This journey is very simple. All it is doing is identifying that individual email results object. Again, we're using that object activity that gives you the ability to select any object in the Salesforce CRM environment to update. So we're selecting that individual email results object. For the record ID that we want to identify, we are pulling in that merge ID from the data extension. And all we're doing is updating that send from name and send from email field with the value that's coming from the data extension that we saw in that Query Studio. So relatively straightforward there on how that's working. Let's go back to our query and see how that's running. So here we go. It just ran through, did all of its activities. Let's go back into journey. You can see a contact is coming in and it's entering in the journey. Should go from 4 to 5. Let's just refresh that. See that come through. Sometimes it takes a second. Let's go over back into this IER record to see if it gets populated again. Let's take a look at the number of this IER record. Here's that ends in BLVNMAA. If we go back to that query, there's that IER record ID. So hopefully the journey should have updated that by now. Let's just hit refresh on that. Hopefully we'll see the field be populated. There it is. There's that record. There's those fields being populated for that IER record. The journey just populated there. So there it is. That's how you can do that end-to-end functionality. Again, we're pulling that data from the IER record from the Salesforce CRM environment. We are capturing that data in the Sen Log in order to be able to link it with that IER record with the Sen Log. And then we're using Journey Builder to update that IER record again. So it's sort of like a back and forth. Marketing Cloud creates this record in the Salesforce CRM environment. It pulls it back down in order to identify which record to update, and then uses the Sen Log to populate that value. So just to give an example of how this can be helpful for sales, in this use case, this is an example a little bit more more records. And so if you updated all of your individual email results records, sales could have some sort of a valuable report that could be used in this way. So for instance, you could see, Jay and Michelle, from a sales standpoint, they've sent out a bunch of different email sends, so they're doing a good job. But Sandesh, he's only sent out 2, or Mispa's he's only sent out 1, and Mispa's only sent out 2. So you might be able to follow up with sales and be like, hey, can you guys just want to check in? Do you need some more of walkthrough on how to use the campaign? So here's just a simple way of using that data in a custom report that you might be helpful on the sales side to visualize that. Okay, let's talk about the preview resend functionality, because it is kind of cool. Let's just walk through what it does. So again, back in the IER record, you can see for all email thumbnails that are populated, one problem with this is that they're not always populated, unfortunately. And then the second part is you can see that it's a representation of the email, but like we talked about, there's no personalization for that email. So what email preview and resend does is it pulls in that data extension, that send time personalization, because we've populated that data extension in the Sen Log. So we've, this is a script that you have to create in the Salesforce CRM environment. We'll walk through what the functionality does in a second, but we've created a button here, and here's an example of what it can do. So one, it will always pull up the email itself. And then more importantly, it will pull in that send time personalization of the email. So this one, I was not personalizing the email, the name correctly, but there's that, what that salesperson was looking for, the send time personalization of those cart items. So, so how does it do this? Let's take a look at this flow chart, because it's a little bit complicated of how it works. So we've got two different environments. We've got the Marketing Cloud environment and we've got the Salesforce CRM environment. So it's just working in both of those environments. So once an email is sent, that data is populated in the Sen Log. Again, if it's populated correctly in that email script. It also populates that value in a data extension. So what the preview button does is it makes an API call from Salesforce. Oh, sorry, let me just, forgot one step. When that email is sent, an hour or two later via the Marketing Cloud connector, the individual email results record is created on that contact or that lead record. So in the email preview functionality, what it's doing, so when you click that preview button like we just did, it's making several API calls back into the Marketing Cloud environment. So there's some data that we've got from the individual email results. So we've got a subscriber key or contact ID, and we've got an email ID usually is populated in the individual email result. So what it does, it makes a call out to Marketing Cloud, and it pulls in the email HTML itself based on that email ID. So it's got the basics of the email to display that. The second thing that it does is it calls that contact ID, and it calls into the Sen Log because that subscriber key is populated, and it goes and finds that data extension. It pulls that data extension back in that we were populating in that Sen Log. Then it calls that data extension, it goes and finds that data extension in the Salesforce Marketing Cloud environment, and then it combines the HTML of that email with the send time personalization that's in that data extension that allows that preview to display. And then we won't have time today, but the additional functionality, that is included in this, it gives you the ability for the user to send that email on a one-to-one basis, resend it to that contact. So if we go back into, I forgot to mention that, in the pop-up itself, there's this resend button. It may not, we may not get a send in my inbox, but it is going to send it to that contact, and it's going to come directly from the person who pulled up that record itself. So we have this documented. I'll include this app overview in the chat if you're interested in taking a look at it a little bit more. Let me just do this to the entire group. We've built this custom app that you can actually leverage for free. If you want to enable this in your Salesforce CRM environment, you will need a Salesforce developer in order to do it. But in this walkthrough, this is an example of the actual email that's sent. It's different content, but it'll come from the person who actually resent it. It's going to be sent to the contact itself. And then the email will have not only email content, but it'll be the actual send time personalization of that email itself. So check that out in the link if you're curious about how that works, and just reach out to us. We're happy to provide you with the code in order to do that. For those who are familiar with Marketing Cloud, there really isn't an ability to do a resend of one single email. Whether you are in Marketing Cloud, and definitely if you're not in Sales Cloud. So, how does that work? How do you, actually do that? So in this logic, when you want to hit that resend button, in the Salesforce CRM environment, it packages up, again, it just like it does for the preview, it packages up the HTML, it does that call all over again. It pulls in the HTML from the email, it pulls in that send time information from that data extension, it packaged that all up in code, and then it sends it over back into Marketing Cloud, where you can either use a triggered send or an API event journey to send that send time personalization. It will populate who that person was sent from, so you can personalize the custom send from, and it will personalize all that information. So on the Marketing Cloud side, all I have to do is configure a data extension for an API entry event or a triggered data extension to pull in that data. So relatively straightforward as well. Okay, so question. Is it possible to show the HTML code for the table in the content? I'm interested in seeing how the table with the images and price details was created. Well, we probably don't have time. Well, I can show you that pretty quickly. We might not have time in this session, but we could cover that in a hands-on session. The way that table is displayed is it does a lookup to a couple of different data extensions using AMP script lookup rows in order to do that. Okay, so that's preview resend. Sorry, that was a lot of information. Definitely check this out. For those who are familiar with Marketing Cloud and Sales Cloud, you know, might be helpful. You know, it's probably, you know, an interesting topic if you try to explore how you could send a one-to-one email, resend an email in Marketing Cloud, especially if you've got a data extension that has thousands of sends. How do you identify that one record to send? And that's how this preview resend functionality sort of solves that use case in the Salesforce environment. Let me go back and let's wrap up this session real quick. We'll just we'll ask for a couple more questions. Okay, tips before we wrap up. Get to know that IER record and how you can customize it. It is a great linkage between Marketing Cloud and the Sales Cloud and Salesforce CRM environment. Obviously, work with the Salesforce CRM team if you're going to be doing any customization of those fields. Be mindful when you're adding those fields to the Sen Log, because it's going to capture data for all of your sends. You know, make sure that there's some governance there, and then also make sure that all of your developers are familiar with those field values, so they're not using them as variables in their AMP script coding in the emails. Use that content block by key function to create one script that does all of your Sen Log field population on email send. That way you don't have to customize that on an email and by email basis. You know, use journeys as a validation tool. So, you know, this example, we didn't really use journeys to send emails. We sort of used it to sort of solve the solution. So our first journey sent those two different emails, so you could sort of compare the before and after using two different email sends in the Sen Log. And then the second journey we just used to update a field in the Salesforce CRM environment. So, you know, think of journeys more than just sending emails. And then also, I think Matthews had covered this in his session. When you're making updates from the Marketing Cloud to the Salesforce CRM environment, single updates, like in this example, you might have on a daily basis, you might have a handful of updates. Those are okay. But if you needed to populate thousands of individual email results records, you might use that data, populate that in a query, and send a CSV file to your Salesforce partners to allow them to do the bulk updates on that end. Okay, great. So that was a session. Sorry, that was a lot. I'm gonna see if I can answer that question really quickly on how the logic is working for this custom table. Sort of have to break in a few minutes, but let's see if we can get in there and answer that question. So let's go into email itself. And let's go into this code snippet. So got two sets of code. This first set of code was that Sen Log variable. And then the second code is the code that is creating that custom journey table. The nuts and bolts of how this is working is we're using a lookup rows functionality to pull in this cart feed, which is based on the subscriber key that's coming in for that email send. So that subscriber key is based on that contact ID for the person that enters in the campaign. With that subscriber key, we're looking up this cart feed. And let me just go to that data extension real quick and to show you what is in that data extension. This is an example of when you're setting up an example like this is based off of an abandoned cart email, or you could use this as an example of a promotional cart for a business example. This data extension is relatively straightforward. What it's doing is looking up, and when it finds that subscriber key, here's that subscriber key here, it is pulling in the item that was going to be featured for that promotional item in that table. Once it gets that item, it's doing a lookup to the product feed data extension. So that product feed data extension has all the details for that SKU number that will be able to display, the backpack image, the description of it, the price, and the quantity. So it's using basically, it's a two data extension lookup to get to that data. So in this NTO product feed, this is just a listing of all of those cart items. And it's got the image that's in Marketing Cloud, the description, the price, etc. So it's like a double lookup. The lookup rows we're using because there could be multiple items. Once you find that specific item, all you need to do is use the lookup to find each of those specific values. So we're returning the image, the product, the quantity, and then that is set to a variable, this table rows variable. It's just a concatenation of all those variables with with HTML in between each of those variables, so it displays accurately in the table. It's concatenating. When you're concatenating HTML and variables, you just use the HTML surrounded by single quotes and commas. So here's an example where we're setting that TR, that table row, and the cell to populate that value. So we're opening up those two containers to display the, this is the formatting for the table row. And then further down, this is where we're using, here's that SKU image that's being pulled in. It's an image tag that we're setting the HTML in there. So sorry, it's a little bit more in detail. Hopefully I answered that question. Combination of HTML, variables, lookup rows, and lookups. We'll probably cover that in a little bit more, maybe building that from scratch in a hands-on session a little bit more down the road. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you everybody for joining. Our next session is on Tuesday, so please attend that. And again, I did capture the email address for the person who's interested in hands-on. We will send you a note and we'll follow up, and you could be a hands-on builder next week. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of the week. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.